Hej! Trevligt att vi har vårt första evenemang, Stockholms arkitektförening, sedan i mars, eller hur det var. Och att vi tänker fortsätta varje torsdag, så att ni ska veta det. Men ikväll är det viktiga. Då startar vi då med denna svenska höst, startar vi med Alejandro Haiek, från Venezuela, numera bosatt i Umeå och är verksam i Umeå, både som lärare och med allt som han kommer att berätta om. Och tillsammans med Marcus Erni som bor och verkar i Stockholm och är arkitekt här, men från Schweiz, så ska det bli ett samtal om Alejandro, vad han gör och gör. Och det var också Marcus som sa till Stockholms arkitektförening, honom måste vi ha till Stockholm. Och nu är han faktiskt här, det känns jättebra. Och nästa gång, på nästa torsdag, då kommer en grupp som, vad heter de? Hermansson Hill Lundberg, och kommer att vara här nästa torsdag. Och ni ska veta att varje gång vi har en kväll nu i höst så går det också direkt streamat ut till de som inte vågar komma hit eller har tid att komma hit eller har någon annan anledning att stanna hemma. Ja, okej.
Okay.
Välkomna.
Ja, kan ni höra mig? Ja, can you hear me? And you can hear. Yes, we are very, very happy that Alejandro could make it here and that we could invite him to this forum. And as we understand, the forum is even like bigger because the lecture is recorded, and that suits you well, I guess. And we made, when we prepared this, even a text which was too long to publish on your forum, but I made a copy, and I think if you could hand out, and this is part of an introduction to Alejandro, because I think the unique combination of wording and text and theory and method combined with reality and real people. So that's the reason we invited Alejandro, and he, as you see in this text, his office is a studio, a new studio. We will talk about this, I guess. What is a studio today and in your context, and Lab Pro Fab. And we are very curious to see work. And please, if there is questions, let us know. There is a lot of slides.
Yes.
But some groups of thematic groups, we say.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. When we start to talk about that, when share a couple of ideas together with Marcus, he mentioned something that was super important for us to receive as a comment. That he said something like, "Okay, you're working with real people," and I realized that it was a very sharp comment, because the people is not just addressing in plans like human scales or in renders, but it's actually is what we most enjoy. Sometimes people having plans and drawings happen after we met people. So the first story that we like to show is the story of Gladys and Luz Marina. They live in the third industrial city in Venezuela. It's a paradox because they live actually in a countryside or in the rural area. So just when the city ends is where they live. Gladys is in her 70s. She moved more than 5 kilometers every day using public transportation, sometimes walking, and walk to basically work as a domestic employer in some middle-class urbanization. But then she need to move back to the favela to take care about Luz Marina, who have a strong disability problem. Not medicated yet. She don't know exactly what it is, But what she knows is that it's not fit exactly with this device. So it's a kind of a particular disability. They live in this favela. As you see, it's a favela, but it's a countryside. It's a rural area anyway. So it's not the industrial favela that derived from the densification of the city, like from the industrial waste, but instead still receive industrial waste from the industrial area that is beside, but in a way is experience this kind of a rough and beautiful contact with nature. As you see, this is a highway. This is a perimetrical highway in the city. Below you see the industrial area, and on the top is this spontaneous growing sector where they live, and what is in red is the house of them. If you see the protocols to live is very much quite primitive in some sense. They still need to take care about this gas device and burn the trash, and it's quite contaminated and not healthy at all. Kids growing in a kind of a landscape of disaster landscape or landscape of decay, interacting with industrial elements or machineries, and sometimes this aesthetic of decay, of aesthetic of an accident, of something that is aging, is something that they recognize as a value. But especially in the case of Luz Marina and Gladys that live in this beautiful tiny house, they have been growing the house, but basically have this important nature, a bathroom, it's a, I don't know how to say pozo septico, but it's like a, they make a hole just to treat the dark water, yes. And what it was important for us is to mapping all these kind of protocols to manage the water, because they don't have water formally and they don't have electricity formally. So, and we were super excited to see how they put this in 2 tanks. The government sometimes fill the tanks 1 time a month, and they manage the way to distribute it in several pots and use them for several issues. And they have actually special elements that treat these protocols. And we realized that the relation with Gladys and Marina with the devices was super close. So we tried to make an inventory of the memory, so which is everything that belonged to the everyday life activities then became an element in a device or a fundamental component of the house. Same with the dishes, the table, the kitchen, that they were really proud. It was one of the first domestic automatic domestic device, and then the closet and the house. But all these units in some way are quite related with the environmental condition of the site. So you see the way that they live below the avocado tree or the mango trees is a kind of, they produce some kind of a natural atmosphere. So we think that the idea should, and in some sense, as you see before, I'm sorry to go back, is 2 meters 40 below the level of the streets. So basically, Luz Marina never reached the street. So when we met her, she was saying, "Oh yeah, I want to reach the street. So I want to. I never get in these frictions and in these transactions that the street produce. Never be part." So when we basically analyze these units that belong to the everyday life activities, Luz Marina never sleep alone, always live with Gladys the entire life. So it was the first time that they're going to have 2 different rooms, which was a super strong change. And everything was based on that, to try to produce a ramp that allow them to stay still elevated from the river that is beside, but still create some kind of a domestic landscape. A ramp that moved alongside the units or around the units. And of course, when we make this experiment, all the units became super important because in some way the operativity of the units belong to these components that are part of the memory, of the inventory of the memory that we were saying. So all of them, in a way, have some kind of in the first floor, try to arrange the positions to not touch the trees, but to allow the trees to perform, to nature to perform within the building. And the units in some way get the measure of the industry and the measure of basically the profiles that we have at that point to build. The beautiful things about that is that the measure below is very much the measure of the social housing. So it's no more than 2 meter 80 plus 3. But then when you cross these measurements with the measure of the industry that profiles coming in 6, 9, 12 meters, then things try to not produce trash. We actually produce trash. So and then the system needs to understand the measure of the industry. So they start in a minimal measure and then contortionate until the top when they get a normal grid of 4.5 by 4.5, so which is half of one beam. So what is interesting is that the contortion make rigid the elements and then below to the industry. So these two different measurements, one that you can see, okay, this is quite tight, no? 2 meter 80 or 3, it's nothing, but on the top you have 4 meter 50. It's that distortionate the logic of a normal construction system. So, but then this quite of geometry and complexity happen in a super accidental way also, no? When Master Rolando was welding with rebars, making these mock-ups, we realized, okay, but the amount of profiles that we received, that was a super crazy move. We start to work with this community. We were engaging with them for a year, and then we asked the government to receive profiles and isolated boards, roof boards, making with expanded polyurethane in the center. It's like a sandwich board that coming from the oil industries. Basically, is Chinese industry and Russian industry inside Venezuela producing, using the oil industry to produce this component that actually run with the government housing plan to produce this kind of a ambition to produce it's kind of a million program, but this is like the Chavez million program, no? Very much. But then we made it, and we tasted it, and all the people were there, understanding what we actually were thinking, no? We were trying to understand this, no? Basically, the strategy of the house is intersect a structure that coming from the industry, of the measurement of the industry, and there are two structures that make a dialogue, but one phagocytate the other, use the material of the other, and then imprint it in the new skeleton. So we, in a way, then the skin of the house is actually the skins of the previous house that were transpassed or translated into a new structure. And that produced sections that, of course, we will never understood as a plan. So, and it's quite complicated to run a calculation process with that. No? So it's like coming from an experiment and then need to be drawn and then calculated. So the process is actually the other way around. So we didn't design to them see how you're gonna build. Then there's no materials in Venezuela actually. So it's like, and what is worse, as an architect, people can change your plan. So and then you put in the materials just sandwich board or similar, but in this similar, everything could happen. No, they can just put whatever. But this notion of prefabrications in the inside of a rural favela is something that was really interesting, the way that they understood and the community became conscious about the efficiency, the construction efficiency, and the possibility to take borrowed crane from the government or for companies through letter of responsibility. We received cranes and very strong apparatus, and that apparatus operativized our construction. So it became.
Yeah, so it's not a regular construction type. It's like
exactly. So the operators know well. In maneuvers in architecture are so quite complicated. People die actually a lot of people died in maneuvers in architecture. So we know that we were playing in that sense, but we trust a lot in this operator. No? Of course, I'm there without helmet, just holding this. There's a lot of things that then, when I saw the pictures, I realized, well, not so safe. But then when they put it there, well, the most fascinating things are the intelligence, the local intelligence that pop up in between some kind of a scientific process and local, and with the local resources. But this tradition, local expertises that we can use. So Maestro Ioannis was worried because he needed to put out this blank to insert it and then put it again in the night because Luz Marina and Gladys were really stressed at the beginning. But then, until the point that the house penetrated the other house. No? And then we were interacting in a kind of a super confronting dialogue. No? Luz Marina were there, having super fun, giving them hammers, and she was just participating in the art. It was super fun to be there until a point that she was exhausted, as everybody in the construction, no? Of course. No? Cesar and Giovanni moved the house several times, and it was quite radical scenarios. No? But one point beautiful is when Cesar was trying to find the angles on that, and then he put nylons everywhere, and in some point he was using an app in his cell phone. The cell phone is the government plan, say this, they call a Chinese industry that reproduced cell phones for the people in the favela. So that was super strong strategy in the revolution. They just give cell phone to everybody. You know? So then it was a tool of control, of course. No? But Cesar was downloading an app to find the angles. And the paradox of this picture is that the computer is plugged to the post light of the street, and he's just downloading an app to encounter an angle. And he found it. So then suddenly this kind of a drastic scenario seems like a Tim Burton illustration. Like we try to understand that the house happened below, and we can extend the position of the door until the front of the house. Just it's a house that just as a facade just has one door, and then the door allow people to enter in some kind of a corridor, internal corridor, and then the house, the line of the facade was pivot into the ground. So then transforming a square, in a public square, in a place that is, so a house, as a domestic house, this line that separates the friction between the public and the private actually happened in the roof. No? There was this crazy encounter when I was talking with Marcus, showing this face of Gladys, super worried about this house. It's like, what is going on there? So then we try to make an inventory of every table, every screw, every element that the house have to put in and categorize and classify into to then put it again as a facade and make a first public art. And Carolina, the neighbor, was putting out like a pieces of things. Hey, you have these handrails that you can use, and everybody start to give us things. No? When we create a perimeter, and the perimeter as a first step establishes a way to negotiate with the community, because the lines are, as you know, they are not plugged, but they create a fence, and in some point they need to negotiate how big is the house. Then when the boards arrive, we install it in just a weekend. So it's, there's this crazy time of architecture. Things take a long to happen because we need to engage and encourage the community to do that. But at the end, we build. It's like a fast assembling of slow architecture with a fast assembling procedure. No? It's a super slow architecture. And this is one of the things that I really want to share, because it was super exciting when one of our engineer teacher from the school, he worked in the laboratory in the Central University of Venezuela, and he helped us to calculate that to at least have some kind of a security. And Cesar was welding with this machine. And it was amazing because he introduced a piece of wood, wrap it up in wires, connect to the post of the street, and then he realized that he wrapped it 70 times, he can weld a profile of 4x2. But then when he liked to weld the small profiles, they burn. So then he wrapped it 5 more rounds. So, and then they have these crazy issues. But the thing is, how could be calculated and certified by a laboratory in the Central University of Venezuela if we weren't meeting with this, so, with a welding machine? Cesar was really angry. He was collaborating with the neighborhood, the guys and Luz Marina, the community, prioritized them, and the workers, the metal workers, worked together to contribute with that. At the beginning, we found we received a funding for encourage these kind of crafting techniques in the community. He used his machine, he burned his machine, and the government never gave back the machine. So that's the reason that he invented this. And things happen. No? In the constructions, always this intelligence happens. So Manrufo, he was welding. He's a metal worker, but also his previous work, he transport melon. So he know how to make the nodes of the melon mesh. So and then it's because the roof became a playground for the kids. We need to also transform in a park. And then he was just inserting this and suddenly the melon mesh transformed also in a playground for kids. But then this quite fascination came when we started just to use everything that we have. OSB that people were using for casting, we use it for cover, or them to make this kind of a precision with every board that we introduce. Some of them actually, there's this aesthetic of the decay, so boards that we select and put it beside of another that is completely oxidated. Well, in some way, we became criticized to play with trash, but we don't have any other options, so we need to keep going with that. No? But suddenly, everything became together. No? It's like but also this, the cartography that we made with all the tools, the tools that happen before architecture. No? So he created their own table, and he actually have a knife. He cut these tables and tried to find the line in the geometry, and then finishing just with a knife. It was like a kind of a wall, but it wasn't a sculpture at the same time. How this happened? How they can recognize the geometry? Cesar was saying that he need to remove a little bit the plank, but he was trying to find the lines. There was the same lines that we were exploring digitally, and all these walls are super expressive, and Luz Marina are super happy in that sense. And then became the doors in these super complicated places, how to make a door that fit with the necessity of Luz Marina, something that she can carry well. No? And in some point, it was the most stressed point. They were there in the last element, the last component of the last space of the house. And we know that they need to move to the main house. So it was a process to jump into a real architecture with all the problems that architecture brought at the same time. It's not that solve things. We produce problems where places there are no problems. But we were there living together, experience, and I can feel the tension to move to a house. And I say that because one of the beautiful experience when they move first times and start to experience the house, they for the first time open a tap and the tank, they use the tank in one day. And then I realized, wow, it's us that we don't even are conscious when you just open that in that run. But for a person that really every drop costs, that industrialization, so modern devices create completely different procedures. And the final demolition act was really tense, was this. We just put it down, Gladys was on the top, on the back there. We covered the main room, and she was really excited because she wanted to participate. We noticed that Gladys have this, of course, she worked as a domestic employee, but she's also the grandma of the favela. She cooked for others. She have this facility, this proximity with plants, but also weaving. She repaired furniture. And she was weaving needing understanding the logic of this unit. And apparently the only ones that have problem with the scales are architects, because she jumped straight to the one-to-one and weaved the house. And what it was fascinating these nights when we finished, we were cleaning, and she was just completely exhausted, that it was fascinating. No? That's something that is translating the emotion to build to someone else. It's not just keeping, and all this pink fascination of Luz Marina that she always asked for a pink house, suddenly changed. She was other person. So just the core, everything would have some kind of design, but the landscape was super, quite difficult to understand because there were not straight walls, there was not wet construction. Everything was assembling. And the velocity of the speed, the vector of directionalities just go in in a kind of a multiple landscape. And everything is open. The kitchen is open. It's 30 degree, a city with a 30 degree temperature, super dry. But if you see the kitchen and the fridge, it just have a lock. So we just put a lock in order to not close the kitchen. So you can close the units.
To avoid the robbery of the...
Yes,
somebody can take it.
But exactly, the main apparatus, no? But also the pans, all the stuff. Yes, Gladys, everything is going to be exposed because this is beauty. What you have is beauty. You know? All these plants are fantastic. This is your space. Actually, you can work with this. So the house is an empowerment machine because provide possibilities to community to develop different activities and create microeconomies and so on.
That's so interesting that the architecture can become a machine to produce another improved existing conditions and by space and programming.
And it's very important because we know that the world this machinery, the difference with the modern machinery is a machinery to create effects. No? It's not the machinery of efficiency. Maybe it's the machinery of production of new effects, of new atmospheres, of new ways of living. No? But then the matches, no? All the dishes fit with the walls, and then everything became a beautiful landscape. This inventory of the memory were there again, and they were exposed in this domestic landscape. Kids were everywhere. They actually use as a playground, and they run there. And Luz Marina is super happy to have all these kids, all the friends. And Gladys is super worried because she's the grandma of the favela, but then they have kids running out there and shouting. But she's fascinated and put all her plants there. And suddenly these beautiful things about the nature, the house performing nature, but the nature also performed within the house. It's something that was super beautiful. The trees, also the water that we collect is because it's an inclined roof. We're collecting at the end and irrigate the entire terrain. So it was just a very simple cycle. No?
In a very special way. It's a small project, but in a way, you told me this was one of the last you made in Venezuela, and then now you're here, and this is a long stretch, and in many ways. The methods here, the innovation of a tool, all these things, I've seen this in your teaching. The students, they build like machines to produce an angle and things like that, which are really like very down to the heart of architecture. And I think that methods are so interesting, and we will see that in other projects. We maybe have to
wrong. Yes.
Focus on the different aspects in every project, but this is so, in many ways, essence of all the other projects.
Yes,
also,
Marco,
the
so nice
small devices, and you will. So that's.
Yes, it's so nice that you say that. I reflect a lot about this house because it was the moment that we broke the studio. So the studio was completely broke. So the country was a mess. It was 2016, 17 before I came, and the city was paralyzed. Was strikes everywhere. So it was the country actually. And in some point, the people that were working in the studio struggling to go there. So because there were not public transportations, we had the studio in the lowest plan and an apartment on the top. So we start to live together, and it became some beautiful things. And then we say, guys, we have tools. Let's go and live in the favela. And then when we live in the favela, it's because Gladys and Lumanina have the card that the government gave as a very populist actions to get food. So we actually found more food in the favela than in our own house. And then it was crazy. We just moved there to live in the favela and build. So it's super connected with here. So I came first time to make a lecture. Very much, I could have, 500 euros, and I get back, and I change this in a black market, and I just bought electrodes and disc for the workers, and then we just keep going and then I just travel again, make another leg to change in the black market, and that's was it. So it was a house of $1,000. So how is possible? So how this could happen? So of course, a lot of things were donated, profiles, things. If you see this, there's a, but it's a house that questions the way that we think in social housing in a way. But it's like it's not the. They are actually producing the same problem that in the 50s, where they're in the first massive housing plans in the dictatorship in the 50s, then in the 70s when they became this oil boom, and then before Chavez died, run again a national housing plan with the same protocol, the same logistics. It's like just move the people from the favela to buildings where people just rent the buildings and keep going in the favela because they prefer to live in the favela. No? So that's the reason that we chose this at the first project, because it's a very unusual project. So it's not a commission. It's not coming from the government. It's just in the moment that everything is broke, that you are broke, that you don't have work, you don't have competitions, everything happened. There is still opportunity for architecture, and that is what is beautiful.
And it was like a restart of your practice in a way.
Completely,
it was like
completely.
A turning point. And,
yes, and then the beautiful thing, as every project, Luz Marina then reached the streets. Everything happened in these beautiful things. The house were there, just one door. This we call saguan. There is a kind of in-between space between the door and the courtyard. The handrails were made with these industrial elbows. And then she took the adventure to go more beyond the streets, to open oceans, holding the back of her mother, sometimes hold the back of their kids, until the point that just he reached. And these actions was like a Titanic with her in the top of the ship, experienced the breeze and the wind, and she was super fascinated how the house recreated these hills. No? And it's still there. The mango tree is growing, the avocado tree is growing, so they still live in the same environment that they will live before. But with a house that performs in a different way. So in a point, I haven't talked with Luz Marina since a year ago. It was super emotional. I left Venezuela, but I also left a family where I live with. And this kind of relations is quite tough for me now, I have to say, Marcos. I became too close to people.
But it's also something which came back in other projects, even larger, that there's a connection to the people who will use it and the interaction. And this is maybe why you're here, because this is so special. It's somehow a method. So we should look at some next project, which is like, born from similar background, but in another scale.
Yes, so then I arrived to Umeå, and I say, okay, my practice is completely paralyzed. But then, because it was a long-term practice, a practice that started without commissions, I just joined to problems that already exist in the city, and I spent time there. I actually believe that this should be the way, is to join to 3, 4, no more than 5 projects, and really keep the track until the end for 10 years, 20 years, to really see an entire generation of kids growing there, to see what happened. Is the only way to really measure but also to understand the pulse of nature, how things change in time. So this was an experience where I was invited to make a lecture in Mextrópoli in Mexico, and they asked us to produce a pavilion, and of course there were no money, and I say, okay, I'm going there, and I presented an exhibition 4 years before in Liga, a space that is supported by Graham Foundation in Productora. And when we build that, we also make a very beautiful group of people that build together. And I call these guys, I call Alejandro Tapia, hey, I have this idea, so let's do something about the earthquake. It's so nice, let's claim the street. Yes, of course, yes. And then we talked with the Huerto Roma Verde, was a botanic garden in the city, and another Armando Quintana was a student that contact utilitario, Mexican utilitario was element from domestic elements from Mexican culture, and then we say, let's do something. Let's try to provoke. And as you know, the earthquake in Mexico was super tough. It was happening 32 years in the same day, and of course, a lot of people they lack houses, and this typical condition of after natural phenomena. But what is interesting to see is how the real market really play with that. So how is possible that in the moment that people really need more possibilities to access to house, then the real market is able to blow up the price. This doesn't have any sense. It's like then we say, okay, the same machine that is rebuilding and destroying the city is the same. We build with the machines that build. We build with let's put it there. Let's put one space that represents what you can buy today with the price of a square meter. Mm-hmm. And then, if you see in the back, you have a room. But what you can buy with the same price after the earthquake is just this platform that is there. So we try to say, okay, let's try to recreate a domestic space there. So we put the bubbles and we create these configurations of several units to see like the domestic cells transforming in a platform and put it the Mexican inventory of objects that belong to the tradition of Latin American traditions of how to live. No? And then things to happen. No? Typical things that happen in Latin America. No? The grandmas are in the dinner table with the kids where they are making homework, they are seeing telenovelas. So it's like just everything happening in the same place. No? It's very much what happened there. No? So we were having these elements and how the device, the domestic device, is the one that actually make operative the space. No? And with Alejandro Tapia say, I just have polycarbonate, let's make something, pieces, I have pieces that I cut, we can use it, and we just use these, attack in the night and install this. Nobody pay attention, it's just the same as they detour the streets, they produce, construction sector really affect the urban space. So people are quite close to interact with this machinery. No? So we were putting this element there, and actually nobody pay attention, so people thought that it was a construction element. No? But then we talked with Heine Hederberg, that is a dramaturg that lived for 3 days there and experienced in a beautiful way how to interact with a machine. Mm-hmm. And so of course, the person that cleaned the space tried to keep it clean, the market recognized and suddenly established a dialogue with the urban, the friction, the transaction of the sidewalk. And the kids stayed there, people use it as a furniture, and sometimes actually stop and move the machine, so they manipulate the machine of the house of Heine, no? And the market also play with them. And he was there, semi-transparent experience, putting all this inventory of objects, the typical Mexican carpet, try to find a way to enjoy the machines, and found how some of the devices, the machines could work for him. And it was super beautiful see him really enjoying the space and sometimes struggling, of course, and having several activities, domestic activities, but in the place, and find positions, no? Understanding what happened there, no? And also covering because it was too hot, and transforming the space. No?
Improvisation, but also the connection to the public space and to culture, like scenography. And so I think that is also relevant for the bigger project, where you will also work with small devices to start with. And
exactly. So it's super interesting what you say, because it's in first time you interact with the machinery, but then sometimes it became a public machinery because people can also use it, or are in the lowest, or at least the contact with the street produces also friction with the public space. So actually, you are suspending a private life on the top of the public space. No, I like to show this video. It's super long. I'm gonna show it, but it's nice that the partner of Heine arrived and put down the machines because he was sleeping. No? And no. But well, so then he have one of these units was a garden, so he can put the gardens, put it up, and really interact with this. So what I think is interesting in that, so it actually hasn't seen as a public, it's a public art, but it's actually, we didn't ask for a permit. It just it's just an exercise to show possibilities, no? So show the way that we understand the inventory of machines that surround us, the way that we understand how to operate on the public space, and try to encounter a space in between that you can actually make a dialogue between these.
It's not like projects, everyday projects. On the other hand, they make a theme of the architectural space. So the.
Do we? All right. I select this project, which is one of the project. It's a very conflict but beautiful project. Zair Navas. I met Zair Navas in a very casual way. I enjoy a lot going there to Katia, which was a super populated favela in Caracas. Again, the same phenomena. So the government built these towers that are controlled by the cartel, and the other part of the favela is controlled for other cartels. So they are dividing the territory, but the towers actually produce a force that interrupt the dynamic of the favelas. Most of them, when they were young, in the 70s, when they built these buildings, they cannot move. Some of them move to the building, some others not. So they cannot play basketball in the courtyard of the building. So they actually struggle that. So Zair Navas and her kids and her friends actually struggled for years. So he was showing possibilities to operate. And the possibilities was a terrain that was safe for the community since the 80s. When they won a battle to the cartel, and then they saved this space. But you see how aggressive is these intersections between these modern blocks in the favela. So it's very much this, what the modern movement imagined, that is a sterile, clean environment. No? But it's actually, this is what happened. No? The favela grew and passed through, and they saved this space that is beside the stairs. So what is amazing, this Carbonell is a super dense favela, but if you can see how amazing is the borderline that divide the favela and the buildings. So this is a quite urban conflict that happened is because architecture. No? But Señora Soraya, this was one of the grandma of the favela, one of the first inhabitants. She was showing me what she called the box of memories. And when I was exploring this, we found this picture. We was Zair actually making a first floor, a concrete floor for a basketball in the same terrain. Huh? And I said, wow, this is a problem that happened. This is a story that I'm joined, but it's happened 40 years before. So this is more than what I expect. And they actually produce barbecues to collect money and present things to make the cultural house there, the sport house. No? She's the Soraya daughter showing me that she was dancing there. But then this expectation happened for 30 years and never happened again. So the kids of the family of Zair also saw this. But the strategy is, how can make a building in a terrain that doesn't have more than 7 meters of front, plus 20, in an accidental terrain where the wall is falling down. So it needs to be a re-engineering of the territory first. It's like a community re-engineering, and then to allow the ground to be operative and allow to produce a fast assembling artifact. So it's two operations. One, the consolidation of the ground engineer, which happened in this super diverse situation. The stairs always have these small bridges that cross to the function. And that's what I'm imagining. Every step of the stairs, you can find a socio-productive or cultural or communitarian program. And we have food production, multi-purpose space that is using sport and cultural activities, info center, and a courtyard that is also multi-purpose. No? And so, but what happened around this is a beautiful energy that people actually is participating, and the people that is there is having a strong periodicity of use that everybody can use the space, can teach, and can find a way to organize this on a schedule. So, of course, we have problem because the kids escape from the school in the morning and try to go to the sport complex, and then who have the key, for example? Who turn out the lights? Things that is a self-initiated project and it's a self-managed project. It's not the municipality that is, the municipality support the project, but there is no a guide from the municipality working there. It's the community that manage the building.
And your role as the architect, that very interesting that you all of a sudden are in a different position. As not, your role is like very extended. You talk to like a director of a movie or something. I always say, Marcus, that I say to the workers that I'm an apprentice. No? And they say, no, but you are an architect. No, I'm the apprentice. I think, we have this friction. No? Because you join them.
Yes, at the beginning, if you are not the one that impose ideas, you are weak, or they doubt. People doubt that, like, but then just time. It's the time as a main resource. So things cannot happen immediately. We build this in no more than 1 year, if you summarize all the moments.
Yeah,
but we spend
spread over
7 years maybe in that, plus 2 years of engagement. So it's almost a decade project. It doesn't have any sense. We buy it. So it's this automatic architecture, but need time to understand.
Design development is done with you, but in interaction. But then the building is really collaboration.
Exactly. And the buildings are used from the first day, or at least this is a strategy that an engagement tool. The building is a tool of engagement. So just to build the foundations is a moment of engagement. So every part of it is an open classroom. So there are training process, there are learning process, there are sharing knowledge. There are all these things happening, and there are social cartographies, talent cartography. So the effervescence, the social effervescence that are enough to really renovate every space. So of course, when we start to do that, imagine the aesthetic of the imprecision, no? That it became some kind of a. We were there trying to measure to see how we got, because we don't have like a topographic plans or something like this. So everything need to be. And I was there trying to see if the grandstand have that nice view. So everything need to be taste. So, but this human power is something that I found that is beautiful. That they create a cooperative construction. They bought a truck, and all the money that we need to put in trucks to put it out from the things the money stay in the community. So there's things that you can operate through the budget or through the normal way that we build, and to try to work in between or understand the legal frame or the legal scaffolding as an opportunity to break some rules or work in between and find spaces of opportunity.
All the workers, they were like from close by.
Close by, they bought this truck, and then the municipality, the mayor, put us a construction company again. And we say, okay, no, but but you need to train the people, or you need to, and that was super, super beautiful dynamic. But at the end, they built this. And I show you this because it's super simple. It's a perimetrical beam that support the grandstand, but also the stairs. And it's a super simple grandstand, but how to cast, for example, how to cast a stair. So elements super simple. How to make just this step. So
you were there and you developed this.
Experiment things. We have detail. We have the main plans, but there are things that happen just in a process of interaction. So we always save space too. But then things happen like this. So the inefficiency, the corruption, so they just stop the process of the ground in the middle. You see that break reveal the bureaucracy and all the inefficiency, no? And I was there just asking for a turn for this kid, but he never gave me the turn. But the plans are there. So of course, there are plans in some point, but the plan is also an instrument of engagement. We are not architects that give the pencil to the other to demonstrate that we are more social or not. So it's something that I have been discussing a lot in social architecture. It's like if I renounce to my architectural knowledge, then I became more social. because we know that if we used to impose things, no? So that is a very subtle friction, because it's not altruist, it's not assistentialist, it's just to be part of something. It's just to be citizens and participate as a normal person. Because what actually society is doing is stratify things and then just separate you from the work. I mean, how can I be in my studio waiting for a commission or for someone that run a competitions if the problems are there? So how to make it? I think this is the goal now. Is how to really recreate the practice, because otherwise we're going to be trapped always.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You know that there might be different ways to start working with architecture.
Yep.
In terms of commissions. So
I'm going to show very fast this because we're running.
So we want to see the urban implementation. You know.
Yeah. But I showed that this is super. This is the part that was installed super fast, guys. It's just, as I say, it's just prefab elements being my frames, but they were prefab and transport there and installing inside. They have this engineer aspect that's facilitating, and we were there, like an futuristic image of a crane in the middle of the favela, hanging things, and not so much workers, and finally happens, no? So you see, super accidental. We use these perforated machines that are coming from the Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese that brought to Venezuela afterward. And this kind of a beautiful effervescence that happened there is like the terraces, the building is a part of that. No? So there's the dynamics, as I was saying before, is quite complicated because, of course, there are a lot of kids. It's actually a school. The school is actually battled within the sport complex, so to try to close the sport complex to allow the kids to go to the school, but then we try to increase the learning process inside of the sport and cultural to try to also have some kind of alternative pedagogy, and these things happen. So it's recreate the same material that you can see in the favela, but it's just processed by different machinery, no? and create a new aesthetic. So it's something that we really believe that the building introduce also another dynamics that actually are not so okay. So the people that have houses around the building, of course, those houses cost more. Some people have been buying houses, and the community organization is trying to buy the houses first. So there's a battle there. So it's a kind of a favela gentrification, or I don't know what it is, but it's super tough anyway. So we try to do good, but we are inserting a device that is so powerful that it could be able to also produce to run things out of control. No? The economy is run out of control. People start to sell things in the stairways, and you know, there's which are the classes that the sport complex could receive money. Some of them are free, some of them are not. So there is an entire question mark in terms of how to run a community project. Still, because if we have the money, if coming and say, I want to show this, because then the entire workers became so excited that we asked for paint and for boards, for covers, for roofs. And the master recovered that. And it's not was a favela anymore. It's like it's people go there.
It starts to become you introduce some new type of space also, you know, a meeting.
Yes, every corner then became interesting, but you see, if you found the constructions in the country club in Caracas, it's made by red bricks anyway. It's just the skin that cover architecture is that what give the status of architecture, but it's actually the same construction. So and then what you see there, now it's not a favela because it's painted and it's repaired, but it still is a favela because you know that it still happens, things like this. The stairs became activated, people became spectators, introduce hope, but also frustrations. But what is beautiful now is that the people that used to live in the people that live in the building that used to play basketball there, the basketball yards are not okay, so they move now so the line disappeared. It's blurring the line. So now the interaction between the favela through the building, but still there are frictions. No, the cartel fight with the Zaire, and I heard that some people from the community die in a fight. So there's frictions. The cartel moved to another building. There's still things that are not solved. So it's a territory that is impossible to solve.
Yeah. So now we saw, I think we should look at this big development you showed me before.
All right.
As these works are really like, it's like a demonstration of methods in one scale, and then this sport facility is in next. It's more public scale, and then it's fascinating that you found ways to project a really large-scale urban development. So I think we should look at that, and we have to.
All right. I need
a
to
bit.
change because I have the industry of nature. But if
I
you
know,
tell me this,
but,
should we club? We should close with this, and we'll give the other.
I think
Okay, I'm gonna do. Marco wants to close with this, but okay, I'm gonna keep it. So should we show the other ones, or should we start with this?
close with this, but we want to see the.
Yeah. Then, yes, it's true. Let's show the others, Marcos. I'm gonna follow the advices of Marcos.
It's a very multifaceted work, and the fascination is also that practice and theory really meet, and I think that was like one of the unique things, to see the students work with departing from this kind of spirit. But then when they see the projects, it's like
Yeah.
So
The things that Marcos say about that project is the scale change, because we have been talking about one device or intervention, but then we try to run that. It's a project that we have 6 years working on. It's ongoing as all of them. Again, self-initiated. We receive funding for government and also for material for private companies. Then the government abandoned us, and we keep running as always. It's always the same. But then what concerns me is that once you get money for some of these forces, things change. And it's a reflections that I want to introduce before I show that. So if I get $1 million to make the sport complex, should I make it in the same way? I'm not sure. And that is something that is super tough to discuss, no? Because once you always struggle with money, but you had the money and the things running completely different, no? So it will not be the same anyway. If we maybe the details, the building maybe end better, but the only way to, because all this discussion about participation is super, participation, what it is, these 2 weeks before you build and to make some ideas, is actually to really create vectors of subjectivity in the community, to allow the people to recreate their practice and recreate the way that they live. So actually what we are trying to think is to understand other ways of labor, which is the base of society. Is to not labor as connected with the network of support, but a labor as a way to improve creativity, abstract thoughts, and subjectivity. So this project happened in this crazy context, which looks like a format, but it was a favela before. It's growing exactly as here. A favela is a national park, and then became urbanized, so it became formal. But especially this sector, was an urbanist, an experiment in the 80s that tried to remove the cars and put all the cars in this parking lot. So it became small corridors inside, and all these corridors, now I took it by the crime. But what is beautiful is the amazing vegetation and the trees that are there. They are national tree. The Saman is a 30 meters tree, giant. And here is a hole, and it's a basketball jar here in front, and here's a space that they put trash. Here is a police station, and here's a thing like a jail for women. Just imagine the chaotic conditions where this happens, no? And this is what happens, completely out of date. So it's just they cannot receive water. The pipes are broke. So they don't have. So they need to deal with these tanks, and that's what we found. this beautiful, amazing tree vegetations with this completely destroyed space. Look at the elements have a model of 1 by 1, so there was a measure that we like to take care. And we meet the community, of course, we make all this process, social cartography, and we found amazing people, talents. A lot of kids were there and were quite tough to work with them. But we also demolish these elements and produce new concrete, pigmented to renovate that. And of course, we have a deal with kids that were working there. So everything seems need to be playful or joyful. We meet in the night because the mayor was opposition, you know, this crazy discussion between government and opposition in Venezuela. There's completely a society that is polarized. And we tried to work in the night because the mayor and the national government were fighting for all these spaces. So we met with the community at night to prepare the project until we attack. At the point we put our office there in the middle of the space and also get into the schools, but we produce this. It's an open theater or open cultural space. We can imagine that it's could work with 3 festivals a year, music, theater, and poetry. And the program is a cafeteria for food, and everything is also learning process is also there. So info center, workshops, and custom workshops, multipurpose space, radio record studio, and a music studio. So people can go there, can practice, can record, can have some invited guests. They can produce a concert at the same time that they can produce the costumes, the scenography. So they work every 3 months for a festival that happens, and of course work everyday activities.
So really, the cultural, informal institutions help to transform this.
Exactly. So it's
land
very much community organizations. So theater groups, a lot of musicians. This is a city of musicians, actually, Barquisimeto, and it was all the time 200 people there, all the time. People always meet everybody every day. It was running out of control at some point. No? But the protocols of building is something that I like to show because it's related with that. If you have this mountain, the mountain that was or the slope that was in the back was failing. So we asked for these machines. We remove the soil. We save the soils to create the topography in the other side. We insert element of stabilization. We insert 1 unit on a container that also donated. We remove the walls of the containers, and we cast the walls with this element. And then is this operation. And then we remove the soil for the other side, cast again, and then the elements. So some of these elements have 3 cycles, or the same elements have different conditions in the constructions. And what we actually do is I use this space to create a natural amphitheater. No? It's this. Let me show you more. Working with the ladies in the community, they cook for more than 100 people all the time. So we create several microeconomies inside of but also it was people collecting and documenting the recipes. Now, it was super because it was part of the popular knowledge there. All these fantastic workers that were there, also from the community participated, and they decide to make an act to put out the fence that separates the park. And suddenly the kids say, there were a park there. We never know. So just people making fences and fences. We traced the territory. Machines arrive, and of course problems arrive as always. And then we insert the container, and suddenly then we remove the planks and the metal boards, and the international trading was printed into the walls. No? The Chinese container that we received, that was just transferred into the concrete. No? And then we extend from the container this huge platform and create a ramp to activate also the constructions. It's very typical. You put a ramp and things happen very fast. But then we never realized that also the carpenters that were there, we received donated wood, and then we just stabilize and create connectors and protocols of mobility, different trajectories, and save the trees. And everything explodes, as always, Marco. So it's like we didn't control this energy. So it's
we somehow orchestrated, but it's a flow of events, and the extending also what architecture normally is, that you make a drawing and it's getting built. It's like you engage a whole community, and that's so special, and it has been leading you to even larger works. And we could look at even you have many other projects in like New Zealand, and in the park and urban development. And maybe we just should pick one slide of this, but because I'm looking at the watch.
Getting late. I think we have 1 hour.
We need to think about time. So should we just look at?
Yes, I can show. Well, I also just want to show the last of this, the image, you to understand this production of the aesthetic that moved there, and this material that were really rough, the scene transforming as a kind of a material that became so aesthetic, and then people from the community come to say, well, but this is how much cost this is too expensive. They say, but yeah, but they are metal. Seeing boards, so it's just to measure the patterns. It's you cut, use the other part, and always is a process of designing there together. No? But what I really want to show is this process when we put the soil later, and we create this other building. It was a quite weird building because it's a kind of a slope. Kids cannot stop, and they use it. It became fancy for kids to be there. And then the whole section that happened was activated by these scenarios. The workers were fascinated. It was showing the palette, but he was saying that the pattern was not correct because the yellow was two yellows together. No? So I was just concerned. And so just change the color of the yellow in one of them and make these fascinating details. No? So this aesthetic is something that I wonder is not too. Be fascinated by how precarious social architecture could be, but instead social architecture is opportunity to innovate in that. So it's when you are forced to.
It becomes like a movement, this project, and that's very interesting in all your works. That it's like it's not only you as the architect; it's like the whole wider in an extended type of architecture, it's like you extend it to the people, to the founding, to the material you find.
It's super nice that you say that. Actually, some of these workers then ask, "Can I use the detail of the?" Yeah, but you did it. Yeah, of course. Can I? Yes. Can I use that? Yes, of course. It's completely democratic, the knowledge that we produce together. No? So it's extended, as you say. It's going until the house of them. So actually, then there was the wife of the metal worker was asking, like, he wanted to make everything like spinning, like twisted. No? Like Alejandro now says, I want to make this kitchen like a spinning, so it became geometric.
So this is an example of spreading ideas. Yes, exactly. But we maybe should move on if there is questions, because I mean it's unfortunately a time limitation, but. It's so much, we're so curious to see more, actually. But is there a microphone for questions? What do you think? Does that work? Is there some questions in the public? Then we're very happy to get them.
Thank you so much. It was really, really spectacular to see all this work. I have a question about the first project, because you always say that it's self-initiated, but how that self-initiation starts? Like, how did you start talking to the client, and how did you get involved with the process? And a sub question of that is, you're showing us like some drawings and some information for our audience, for us. But I wonder, how did you use representation of architecture and the plans and the drawings and the perspectives for those moments in which you had to convince certain people that first they were not architects, and second maybe they were like the people that were putting money that maybe you are not so convinced about, but you have to use some perspectives or some kind of documentation to involve them at some point. So maybe to talk about what are the tools that you are using for that kind of audience.
Yeah, Carlos, the houses were accidental. So what happened to me after the project that I didn't show, there's the one that Marcos wanted to show. It's too long, it's the project of 15 years old project. After that, in some way, one project derived to all the projects. So I met Luz Marina and Gladys because when I was working in this project, one of the guy that transport, bring the containers, actually was connected with that. So, and then there were a couple of friends that we get together and visit the favela and start to work with it was a fascinating favela. It's beautiful because you can see the entire city. It's quite and the details are like a rural favela. It's super strange. So then, from that project also, we keep going with Cesar with other projects. So it's sometimes communities say to us, "Oh, you need to see this space that we have with the," and I have been just listening stories, and that's built my professional practice. It's super crazy that, and actually, and I try to move people, also. Sometimes workers, even that we have local workers, move one worker to each other. And your second question is the representation. I think that most of these, we always bring some kind of a basic diagrams, but everything happened with the mock-ups. I think that is the fascinating things too. You just experience this, what we have. Sometimes in, for example, Tuna Fuerte Cultural Park, we have containers when we have been saving things from decades. And then when community asks for a stairs, for example, we open things and say, okay, what we have here, we have this beam, and we make an exercise together. We ask the metal worker to teach the kids, and then we produce a workshop, and the stairs happen. Now, when I go to Tuna, there's a lot of stairs similar, so I don't control that.
Det tråkiga är att vi redan är över en kvart. We are already passed by the time that we are used to be here. And I wanted to see your Umbria. You have to get the pictures just passed by at least.
Please.
And is anybody more who hopes to say something?
Thank you, August.
How would this be different? These projects in a Swedish context. How could this relate to a Swedish context? Or how would it be different? Or would it be different? Or
I knew you were going to ask me this, August. But then that's the reason that we saved this project at the end. But we're okay. I just want to run this process. Yes, the project in Mexico was different, but I guess you saw once the project in New Zealand, no? Because I usually receive that, but when I went to New Zealand and make this project, that it was after the earthquake, it was completely the same. When I went to Japan, it was the same, and when we were in the school, we were working on the same. The tone changed, so the problems are the same around the world, but the tone changed, the grain of it. So let's say the first time that I went to Ollingham, for example, in Women, and I remember that I was with Sarator, my colleague, and they invited me, no, we're gonna work in Ollingham, that is the perfect place for you to work. And I arrived to Ollingham, it was beautiful, the garden in this building, everything was fantastic there. And then once I understood what happened in Ollingham, then you say, okay, there is other problems there, no? But it's super invisible, no? So, it's actually happening in Sweden. It's already happening. No? There's people running cultural centers or community centers, people that have been moving from one side or the other, people that squat some terrain or some plots. Or let's say, of course, I'm not saying that, of course, in Latin America, things happen in a different way. Yes, this is true. But it's not exactly true that these things happen in Latin America just, no? Because then when I travel and make things, I don't know, same in Spain, no? Carlos, as there's, so, yes.
Yeah, about these containers that you have mentioned now, they own to you, the office, to the who is the owner, who manages these containers. You have the material for working. So
Who donate us this, no?
Who owns the material now?
Yeah.
Are you the owner? Or
No, the containers was a crazy story. So you know the favelas used to have, they were yellow because they used bulb. There was not ecological. So then the Chinese sent I don't know how many containers with white bulbs to change all the bulbs from the favela. So actually the landscape in Caracas changed from yellow to white. So and we knew that. And we saw those containers, and we were looking for these containers for those containers for years, and asking until Corpoelec, which is the company, electricity company, we wait for 2 years after we asked, and suddenly they called us. Yeah, we're gonna donate 44 containers. It's like wow. So then there was a collapse, the highway and things. It was we need to ask for a crane to put it down. So then after we have 40 containers, we just play with that. We don't have buildings, but we have elements. So, and with this, we really run a cultural park for 5 years without having infrastructure. Just place it, and so it was an anticipation of a building.
Thank you. I'm still wanting those.
Yes. Show you
you should.
please.
We just have to pass by you.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
I would like to say this is in a way similar to, this is a project in Italy, and related to the question, how would you work in Sweden? You know, you would find a task and start to work.
Yes,
And
well, this
that's,
when I saw this, I thought of Gotland.
yeah, exactly.
It was very beautiful. It was we just were working with hails in Italy. I won this award, Civitella Ranieri award, that's supposed to receive $50,000 to make an installation. I never get $50,000 to make one of these buildings that I show. So imagine with what ethic I take $50,000 to make a sculpture or a pavilion. I was super in conflict in that point. And I say to her, I cannot do that. I really cannot do that. So actually just everybody it was in the castle, in Civitella Castle, it was super crazy. And I just go to the farmer and get there. And I spent with them working in the field for a month until they start to give me the truck sometimes, no? But they say me once that the truck costs exactly as one apartment, no? And then it was like, no, better not, better I wouldn't touch. But we distribute this as a patterns. We put it in the territory. We were encouraging the farmers to create subjectivity. Again, to understand their work as a part of, they say, but how do you create this landscape? How do you place the halo? No, I just hear the beep in the machine that say me when they roll it, and I just click. Okay, but it's so beautiful. Yeah, but it's not just the machine. But why you don't think when to push this? But why? But just try it. Look, this is the story of a month trying to convince our farmers to just get free about that. At the end, he became obsessed with the straight line. And he directed me like it was one picture there. I don't know. Yes, I was there also holding on. Sorry guys, I'm going to show this because I really want to see that. What is this? Okay, me taking this car, no? And then they was just here, no, but because we were receiving instruction on how to make the line. And he pushed me, move forward, push it. He was trying to find the line. So the farmer was saying me to move these hay rolls. And at the end, we put it there, and we became crazy. We talked with worker of that repair Fiat robot in the Fiat factory that is beside. And he helped us to create a structure to pop up the stripes, no? And we crashed this hero to the castle. No? We invade, the farmers invade the castle. No? And they were laughing, the farmers were super happy. And the traces, the material that I have, is just, when they cut the grass, I took the fresh grass, make a hole in the ground and put this line. So, and then leaves or heroes, put it in this kind of a, and then when we contortionate the rivers became structural. So and we need to find a foundation. There was something amazing that we found in the Italian prefabrication industry that happened from 1957. We found foundations that you can see in the back now. But then these stripes are the different type of industrializations of these techniques. No? Became a hero. It's dry, but then they make this industrialized curtains, and that is the nature itself that these species grow 1 meter a month, and the entire, we use 2 rivers of 12, so 24 meters, so they move, we planted in both sides, they move and encounter in a year, so the piece actually revealed the pulse of nature. So, but it was an experiment. So then, what was beautiful is now Civitella Ranieri make an agreement with the farmers and create an economy, a network of economy. The chefs are cooking of Civitella, which is the girl that heritage the Cocina Povera, is using this product and just became a network. I thought it's very important this question because I want to wrap it up. I always ask about time. That time is the main resource for architecture. So. And I was worried to make an intervention in 1 month. It was impossible to engage. But actually we engaged. We became so good friends. We still talk to each other, send messages. They receive me and the family. They actually invite me to with Senor Armando, which is a worker. They send me, amigo mío, ciao, all the time. So we have this, send me the pictures of the grain that I work with. And the principal curator of Civitella, Dana Prescott, was posting the best apricot ever from Familia Pauselli. So I thought that I was performing in a way, that I was not so, but at the end, it's the time, of course, important, but whatever the play, when you remove the equations that you really work and understand the work as a part of your daily life, and not is something that really helped to introduce subjectivity in everyday life, so which is what we expected. Open new ways to work, discover new ways to understand how we deal with that, with our everyday life. And I think this is the most relevant things. Is to recreate the world should be the first things that we should start to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Thank you.